What is content? That is the small meta question we are asking today, which has some big complicated answers, to be honest. Think about it. Is this podcast content? Right, it's a very existential question that we are asking. And what does content even mean today? What in this larger internet verse does content mean? What did it used to mean also? That is a big question, and to answer this very crucial, very important question, we have with us Anushka Shah. Hello, Anushka.
Hello. Hi. Thanks
And
for having me.
to introduce her, she's the founder of this wonderful production house called Civic Studios. And their objective is to leverage the power of storytelling for social good and civic awareness, social change, I would say. And they run this very fun comedy Hindi channel called Pocket Change. And they have other projects running as well, which we will also talk about. Also, a very fun fact, one of the first projects that Anushka Civic Studios had ever funded was Constitution. So the monster who is hosting this podcast is a partially a creation of the monster that is with us here. So thanks, Anushka, you're the best. It's like
I think this might have been my favorite introduction so far.
and the union leader of spectators today is my colleague and the social media lead for IVM podcast, Farah Rumaney. Now,
Hi.
Farah is a person who deals with content on a day-to-day basis, and she's desperately trying to create reels on literally an hourly basis for whatever podcast comes our way. So I thought this would be a great person to have today for this topic, which is what is content. So hello to both of you.
Amazing.
Hi,
Hi.
Meghnad.
We will start with just this basic question first, and I want Farah to sort of make an attempt at it. What is
Okay.
content, Farah?
So, in short, content, according to me, is a package of your ideas, emotions, expressions that you share it with other people. So, basically, it is a package of your story.
Hmm, interesting. Anushka, do you want to attempt that?
Yeah, I like that definition because I think it's quite agnostic of the form that it comes out in, which is what I think defines content today. And it's really funny because I often say after dinner when I'm in Bombay at my parents' house, I'll say, "Acha, I'm going to watch some content now." And they're like, "What?" They're like, just because you work in this industry doesn't mean watching a movie after dinner is any different from what we do. And it's true, right? I don't think you'll ever hear the older generation saying content. They will say
Hmm,
movie, yeah, they will say
hmm,
play. I think content, I would define it as any kind of audio, visual, written media that you would consume, let's say out of a need for information, for entertainment, or just pure boredom. And I like Farah's point about it being a form of self-expression.
hmm. I have a very fun story around this, I think similar to yours, Anushka. So I used to work with News Laundry, and because I was creating videos, one time I wrote this email to our editors saying that, oh, so this is my plan to make the content better, like thumbnails, all of that stuff. So one of our sub editors, Mehraj, he got very annoyed. He's like, please stop calling this content. We are doing stories, we are doing journalism, we are doing news. And I wanted to get to that a little bit because I think your parents, right, when you say that, oh, I'm going to go watch content, they're like, why don't you just call it a movie? Or why don't you just
Yeah.
call it this? Is it an insulting thing to say that a movie is content? How does that work?
I don't know. So I think content sounds a little bit drier, a bit more banal, a bit more like it's a less romantic, romanticized word than I think a movie or a film or cinema. But it, for at least for lack of a better term that we work with right now, I think it's quite widespread and versatile as a word in all of that it contains. Because when I say I'm going to go watch content, my viewer habits today are probably not like my parents, right? They're going to sit and
Hmm.
watch a movie in a focused way. I'm going to sit there and consume a movie while I'm also consuming reels and consuming like a WhatsApp message and, maybe like scrolling. on Twitter, so I'm consuming multiple forms of content. So I think that it's a bit more of a dynamic journey, which is why just calling it a film doesn't work anymore.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Farah, just taking that question to you as well. Um, do you think the content is a loaded term now? There are certain emotions attached to it, or there is certain, as Anushka put it, I would say that it's a very functional word, or it has become a very functional word. What are your feelings about that?
Yeah, actually, I don't think content is a very loaded term right now. So, as Anushka said, like when we are watching a movie or something, or we are watching, suppose we are writing something, or we are doing something else, side by side, we are also scrolling through our social media apps, like scrolling through reels. So, I don't think so. It is a loaded term, but it's just a one word that you can define to different packaging of different media.
So information, can we say it is all information that is
Yeah,
packaged in
exactly.
a different way?
Yes, agree, totally. We can call it
Uh,
like a package of information.
and Anushka, you said something very interesting earlier. You said that things you consume when you're bored, right? Why did you use that specific thing?
So I think I would draw a bit of a distinction between, let's say, information, entertainment, what you might consume for boredom, because, and this is, of course, just comes down to nuances of definitions. But I think there's a lot of content that you are looking for as filler content to
Hmm.
scroll almost when you don't even want to have thoughts, right? You want your brain to be mindless. And there's a specific user journey. You go to, like, of course, it depends on how you've curated your own algorithm on any app, but let's say you use TikTok for complete board content. I think when you're scrolling that, I don't know if you're necessarily always picking up information or even entertainment. I
Hmm.
think uh, it's possible that it's doing just the bare minimal to your brain, which is just giving you something to engage with, and it stops at that. Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot of content that we demand when we are just bored, and not even
Hmm.
necessarily looking to be highly entertained.
Now, Civic Studios. So you have a very solid objective, right? Which is bringing social change about, right? Um, so when you are as a production house creating content, how are you thinking about that? Like, how are you doing that?
So for us, I'll just give it two lines broadly about what we do, and to drive into the objective that you said. For us, it's about creating entertainment that provokes social change. We say provokes because we don't see ourselves as the people who are trying to come up with the answers of what is right or wrong. We are kind of the messengers working between the development sector, experts, community organizations who are working on ground with issues like health, public policy, education, unemployment, to different types of audiences. Um, and so we try and create short form digital comedy on our YouTube channel Pocket Change. We're making films, we're making web series, we are making docudramas, and we're trying to create those narratives in a way that is entertaining and engaging. You want an
Hmm.
audience to come to it not because acha ye picture mein ye message hai, so we should go see it. That's a very small audience who may already be so motivated by that issue who will come to watch it. So to make it entertaining, we make sure we're working with experienced writers, talent, directors. It could be younger writers, directors, but whose objective is to first and foremost tell a good story. And then within that, we try and create this interdisciplinary environment where the research team and the writing team will come together to craft their own messaging from that based on the on-ground input. Um, so that's broadly how we function. So I think our objective is really that, to create entertainment that's entertaining, engaging, and then empowering.
Hmm. So if I had to go deeper into that answer a little bit, right?
Hmm,
So let's say you are creating a video on a social issue, right? Let's pick any, like garbage collection.
hmm,
So like we need to have like a clean environment, all of that stuff. So if
yeah,
you had to do something like that, how would you go about thinking how to create that?
yeah, that's a
A
good question.
message, yeah.
So I think we would start by saying, okay, if we want to make something on garbage collection, I think we would start by thinking of who is the audience first and foremost we want to reach. Are we trying to reach decision makers here? Are we trying
Hmm.
to reach a general audience and just create awareness? So let's take the second as our
Hmm.
objective. We want to reach a young audience who is, let's say, 18 to 35, who lives in tier one, tier two cities. They are aware enough. They can see the issue of garbage. And I'm focusing on urban, semi-urban areas. They can see the issue around them. They probably, if we did like a bit of like a focus group discussion or some survey or research with our target audience to understand how they think about that issue, I suspect some of the findings might be that they know it's a problem, they're bothered by it, but you don't really know where to start. You're also maybe not that motivated because it's a public issue. It's not just about you. um, so I think we would try and find what it is in that really bothers them and use that as our starting point as an insights. Now we would do research on the issue. We would say, where does it come from? Why is it
So,
there?
sorry,
What's the
interrupting you. So, like
Yeah, yeah,
here, you are essentially identifying the problem statement per se. Like, so the
absolutely.
need is what you're like,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. And it's very important, we feel, to get that from your audience. Do not sit in an
Okay.
office as two or three people and think that this is what I think the problem is. So you want to take a very
Hmm.
user design approach, right? Tomorrow, when you're designing an app, you're going to have an idea, but then you're going to go and do research with your potential target audience and say,
Sure.
what is their problem statement and need gap? Now let's try and design a product that can fit that. So that's similar to what we do.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
now we would do more, let's say, R&D and research to say, what should this product look like? Okay, this is XYZ could be the direction of the messaging. um, this audience, let's say we say, consumes mostly web series, right? So
Hmm.
then we want to make a web series out of it. We know that our web series, because our focus is mainly fiction, and we do think fiction as of now in India has a broader reach, than
Yes.
documentaries, and that should change. But as of now, that's what we our research also shows. So we would do fiction. We would, bring on a good writer. We would say, let's craft a good story around this. We might look for an existing book or an existing real story that you want to adapt around this. Now, I think what's important is that in that story, you're not going to try and be so targeted about your message. You're not going to say that it's exactly X and Y and Z that needs to be there in your script, because you can't control a story that tightly. You want
Hmm.
to say
Hmm.
broadly, we wanted to touch upon X, Y, Z, but you have to let the story and the writer find their own way through that. And the beauty is you
Sure.
don't know necessarily what will come out at the end. Or then you found a book that or an existing IP that you feel, okay, this exactly fits my objective. So then
So
you would
if I
go
had to
about
say
it.
it simply, if I had
Hmm.
to say it simply, so like for example, Salman Khan coming on TV and saying कि यार ये कचरा साफ करो versus a Salman Khan actually sweeping the floor and you showing him doing that is what we are going for here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to ever preach to the audience. You want to put the thoughts out there, ask the questions, and then we all collectively find answers as creators and consumers. Um, so I think,
It go on,
yeah.
go on. Sorry.
Um, so yeah, I think very much that when you show characters embodying a certain behavior, and if your audience aspires to be that character, that actor, then that has a huge effect,
Yeah.
as opposed to your character saying something very directly. Now, even the character saying something very directly, I'll come to that second part where I think if you have, because what we do is we have our films and our series that are coming out, and then we have impact campaigns around them. So we work with that same talent. We work with different influencers who might, work in that issue area, and then we do more direct messaging through them. So it's like the same way you would do a marketing campaign, we do a very issue focused impact campaign. So we had a short film come out on Amazon recently called Vakil Babu. It's fiction. It was on gender and accessibility of courts. So great. It came out on Amazon. It was in the top 5 short films. There was a premiere for it, all of that. But now we're taking the films to bar associations, law colleges, to discussions with law students, and having a very targeted conversation on introducing gender sensitization for the judiciary. So kind of play it two
It,
ways.
interestingly enough, constitution, when you sort of supported it, I think you needed one thing, which is data from us, which is like insights on who is engaging with this sort of content, and what is the demographics, etc., average span of how much they are watching, etc. So that was one of your requirements. And I think the other thing which we found from constitution was that people started using it in classrooms, which I told you
Hmm.
about this as
You
well,
did.
right? Which is
Yeah.
like teachers were showing it in classrooms for kids to engage with. For it, so our TG was initially like general audience, which they say this garbage campaign we're talking about, but it turned to be something
Hmm.
else entirely,
Correct.
right? Like now it is like this influential leaders, etc., who are watching this, but
Yeah.
also like teachers are using it in their classroom. Farah, so
Yeah.
when you are so when, say, for example, Anushka is designing content with like a very specific objective, which is civic engagement, or sort of pushing for change or something of that sort.
Yeah, with the
But
cause.
for
Yeah.
you, it's different. You are trying to push IVM's products. So how do you look at this? How do you create content around this?
So, basic like three pillars, like Anushka said, three pillars of content is basically entertainment, engaging, and empowering, educating. So, when we create a specific reel or say a post or something for IVM, so we look into this if this content, whatever our idea is, accordingly, if it is engaging, empowering, and entertaining with the audience or not. Accordingly, we take decisions on these things. So but right now, if you see the content, like she Anushka said about the influencers campaign and stuff, if you see the influencers concept was, it has gotten a little older right now, because now it's content creators. So as a content creator, IVM podcast being content creator, we look at entertaining people, engaging people, and share message across platforms, as in uh, like whatever what our idea is, that we share with people on different social media channels.
Hmm. But like, so Farah, so like, for example, let's take a recent reel that we did, right? Like IVM did this reel
Yeah,
where there is this war happening between the audio engineer, the video engineer, and the producer, where they
producer,
and
right.
Farah is sitting listening to a podcast, which is
Yeah,
podcast listener, and there are people fighting behind her and beating up the producer because
the
they're like the
reality
ones who
of
are actually,
podcasting. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
like
So
when you
basically,
made that, how
yeah.
did you, what did you go about, and what was the message there that you were trying to send?
So basically, if you see, it is a recreation of a trending reel. So the
Hmm.
music that's going behind is "Ab to aadat si hai mujhko aise jeene mein." So
Yeah.
there we are actually showing that a podcast listener is relaxing and listening to an episode of a podcast, like, and but what goes behind it, the team, the struggle is real, the hustle of the team, that is what we are trying to show in that. So basically, that 10-15 seconds of a reel is a storytelling, that what goes
Hmm.
behind the struggle and the hustle, and the package that you get, the end result. Yeah.
Anushka, this trending reel, right? So like let's get to that. I think you know content nowadays is a short form, like doing really well. People are engaging with it. People are trying to do even shorter and shorter and shorter amount of content, which will be packed with information, let's put it, or a singular message that will just hit you. um, so when you are sort of designing content, are you looking at trends as well, and isn't it like a little tricky to do that, is my question. Like, like it, I mean, sure, ये आज trend है, कल चला जाएगा, तो your content that you made, it becomes wasted tomorrow. So
Waste, right.
Yeah.
how do you get over that, or do you even think about that?
Yeah, our social media team would definitely be the right team to answer this more closely, but I'll take a stab at it. I think the thing about what's trending is very particular type of format you're making, right? Like in long form content, you are trying to find things that are going to last the test of time. You want
Hmm.
something to have a long shelf life. as you come down from, let's say, films and series, let's go to shorter formats like a YouTube video, right? The kind that we do in Pocket Change. I think there you are looking for things that are trending, but it's hard to for the production cycle to keep up with a 48-hour turnaround. You need at least a
Hmm.
few days to be, let's say, to put out a comedy sketch. So you'll go with things that are, let's say, topically relevant, that you know the audience cares about. You'll try and predict beforehand. Let's say if there's a big film release coming up and you want to do a spoof on that movie, then you'll manage to get that timing just right. So certain pre-planned events or calendar events like a Republic Day or a Valentine's Day or something. I think as you come even shorter form, then those timelines become by the hour.
Hmm.
And social media teams are constantly keeping up with that and constantly creating content. And there's all sorts of now accessible apps and tools where you're creating content on the go, so that it's not about having a heavy production setup where you've got to go to an office and have an edit system and then make your content and put it out. It just happens on the go. um, so yeah, I think on our social media side, we very much think about what's trending. We work quite hard to try and keep up with that. um, uh, I think for us, it's hard to find that balance between what's trending and then what's socially relevant to talk about, and then what's
Yeah.
Yeah.
trending and socially relevant that's not politically sensitive.
Yes. Oh my God.
So,
It's like me. It's like you're talking like me. It's like, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I think that makes it for us slightly challenging to be as fully on top of the trends as somebody else. And with our social media, we've over time we've had a struggle to figure out what's our tonality, what's our voice. I think our Civic Studios handle, it's very chotu. It's like 20K followers, but it's an initial audience. Um, and I think what's important is there we've realized that we found things that are working for us, because we grew this
Hmm.
20K over the last, I think, 6 to 8 months. So that was a sudden rise, and that was because we said, okay, we don't necessarily need to be super trending by the hour on that. But at the same time, it's very important, since our focus in that is talking about films and social impact, that we're talking about current things. What are people consuming? What do they want to consume? They're looking for movie suggestions. And then a little bit also of the most throwback, iconic, classic movies that in some
Hmm.
sense that's always trending. So
Nostalgia is what you're going
nostalgia,
for.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I have been struggling with this for years now. So my journey with content actually started in Parliament, right? So uh, funny story. So like I used to work with this gentleman called Tathagat Satpathy, right? Old man, no idea what to do on the internet, etc. But I had this radical idea that we should start a YouTube channel and we should start recording all the speeches that you're giving and then putting them on YouTube. So he was like, "Ha, jo bhi karna hai karo. I mean, as long as like my word gets out and whatever." Now, some of his speeches went crazy viral, right? Like of course they were on very relevant topics like Kashmir and a bunch of other things.
Hmm.
But then what I realized was I started looking at it like a science, because this is the first time I was introduced to the YouTube analytics dashboard, and I know Farah is obsessed with that.
Yeah.
We found out what is the average attention span that people have on our, just generally, like the 10 speeches that we've made, and it came to around like something like 2 minute 20 seconds. So we had this in the speech I had written, like I used to have time codes in his speech, where at before 2 minute 20 seconds you have to use a certain punchline. After another 2 minute 20 seconds before that you have to make someone laugh or do something or tell a story, right? So we looked at it like a science, where it's like based on average attention span. Okay, I have a pop quiz here for both of you. Farah, do you know what is the average attention span right now? Just,
Average attention span.
yeah.
It's between 3 to 7 seconds.
Okay, like Anushka,
I think I remember seeing this in some Microsoft research. I think it was 8 seconds.
eight
I don't know, but
seconds. Yep. Like it's shorter than a goldfish now.
yeah,
Literally, like that saying, which is memory of a
yeah,
goldfish. We are even less
Yeah.
than that. It's
yeah.
crazy to me. Farah, maybe you can talk a little about this as well. Uh, what can you say in like 8 seconds? Like it's a big question.
Actually, that's the big thing, when we run ads on Facebook for certain content or certain shows that we have. So while the Facebook actually says that the attention span of people when they're watching an ad, that is 3 seconds. That's what I read a while ago. So now when we were creating ad videos, अब फर्स्ट थिंग वाज़ यार दिखाए क्या हम शुरू के 3 सेकंड में, हाय बोलने में ही निकल जाता है उसमें। सो
I- and also YouTube, the skip ad thing comes after 5 seconds, right? So I was looking up a YouTube kai study. 94% people skip it. So which means that 5 seconds is what you have to convey the ads,
Yeah.
and the ads are changing
राइट।
according to that as well. Anushka, you can also maybe take a stab at this. What can you say in 8 seconds?
It's a hard question, man.
It's a
I don't
very
think
hard
we've
No.
cracked
question.
it.
How tight can you keep your content to
Yeah.
keep people engaged?
Yeah. I
I
think it
have
was
yeah. Go on.
no, no, go, go, go.
No,
I was
I
just
was
gonna
thinking. Go on,
okay, okay,
Anushka.
I'll do it. I was just gonna say that in those 8 seconds, you want to just, I think you just want to communicate to your audience what they're going to get out of this. I think it's a very utilitarian 8 seconds, right?
Mm,
Now, that can come
mm,
out of you directly saying the topic, that can come out of you fronting who the main face in this video is going to be. It can be like showing that, like a clip, the most interesting clip from the
mm.
conversation. But I think your 8 seconds is to say, here's why you should watch this video.
Like a
However,
cold open.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's actually an interesting approach. But you know what I've been thinking about? So ever since I read this stat a few months ago, I was like, 8 seconds mein kya hi kar sakte? So I've been trying to make reels for the past few
Mm.
months, and the most fun part about making a reel is the editing. And people are like, "What is this? Are you nuts?" Like I was like, "Yeah, the editing part is where I find the most fun." What I am now doing is that, so like if I'm like saying this to you, it will be cut into portions which are
Mm,
less than 8 seconds. So like
mm,
so one time I'll do this, but the next shot is like this, and the
mm,
next
mm.
shot is like this. So I do that because then these quick cuts sort of also ensure that you're sort of reviving the attention span a little bit. And I've
Yeah.
seen a
Correct.
lot of short form content makers do this. I don't know if they're doing it like after reading this, or they're just doing it instinctively because it works. How can you do that in a movie though? Anushka, like, so when you're making a web series and you know that for a fact that art second is what you're
Mm,
working with,
mm.
how do you make sure that that people watch the entire thing, or at least a significant chunk of it?
So I don't know if the 8 seconds I would apply it with the same way to films, because even
Right.
though there's been a huge drop in attention spans, um, like by half. I think if it's 8 seconds now, 20 years ago it used to be like 15 seconds. So in some
Hmm.
sense, I don't know if we were too
Yes.
much better off even 20
Yes.
years ago. But 20 years ago, you didn't have such short form content where in those 8 seconds you had to convince someone, right? But I think that with the drop in attention spans and the rise in short form content, there's been a simultaneous huge rise of long form content as well. Not just in films or series. And obviously, I think we all know anecdotally we're spending way more time today consuming great films and series content compared to before. But even in terms of written content on the internet, long form articles have seen a huge rise. So I think if you take an
Hmm.
average article like 900 to 1100, 1200 words, um, compared to something above that, up to like 7,000 words, the engagement rates are 4x for the long form articles compared to the average articles. And I think a reason for that difference is what is the intent with which you are going to a long form piece of content, written or visual, right? You are going with the idea of, okay, I'm going to settle down into reading this nice long article, or I'm going to settle down now into watching this film. So I think you're going with a longer attention span, a commitment for a longer attention span. So I think I don't know if I had 8 seconds as much I would feel for movies, but I think definitely true for even like YouTube videos.
Hmm.
Like when I watch Tanmay Bhatt's videos, right, I think the guy's a master and he knows exactly how to
Yeah.
like his he just understands the internet, I think, better than anyone. And I think his videos are a real lesson in kind of the editing, the thumbnails, the titles, how to keep
Yes.
that attention span going. He's like what you were saying, every section of I think 5 to 10 seconds, he's got something that keeps you hooked. He knows he needs to
Hmm.
keep the adrenaline flowing. So yeah.
Farah, so you and I sort of deal with one of these mediums, which is long form
Long
podcasting.
form podcast. Yeah.
How much of a challenge is it for you to push that? अब तो हम जॉब्स के बारे में ही बात कर रहे हैं, मतलब लाइक फरा के जॉब इंटरव्यू चल रहा है अब.
Exactly.
Yeah. But what are your
So,
sort of insights from pushing this medium? Because IVM is, I mean, the pioneer in podcasting in India. We have like around 100 plus shows.
hmm.
We have had breakaway successes, but also failures. Like, how do you sort of look at this format and how do you push it?
So yeah, long form content, when people are watching long form content, they actually, like Anushka said, they get into it with an intent that even if it isn't starting on a catchy note, it will get better. So
Hmm.
that is how we promote long form content on social media. We take interesting excerpts from those long form content, give a glimpse of short snippets from these episodes to people on our platforms, and then that drives engagement to these long form content.
That's actually an interesting way to put it. One more person I would like to mention here is Joe Rogan. Now, Joe Rogan, like, I mean, he is problematic in his own ways, etc. Keep that aside. But as a strictly content perspective, if you look at it, he has some podcasts which are like 3 hours long. And even Indian, if you want to speak about it, Amit
Yeah,
Verma,
Amit.
he is now
Amit
doing like
Verma's is
five
like
and a
7
half,
hours.
7 hours
Recently, I was
of podcast.
listening to an episode which is like 7 hours long.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite episodes he did, which was with Pratap Bhanu Mehta, it was like 4 hours long. And I
Yeah.
heard it over 2 weeks. But I kept going back to it because I was like, yes, I
Yeah.
want to know what this guy has to say about anything that he
Yeah.
says because
Yeah.
I like the
Seriously.
man, right? So, I mean, yes. Um,
Yeah.
it's so Anushka, where does this fit? The 4 hour, the 7 hour content, which is a podcast, is just two people talking, right? Uh, what do you think? Where is that going?
I don't have any experience of working podcasts. I don't know if I'm I'll have an informed answer on this, but I think it's similar to the other thing I was saying about long form, right? You're going in with that
Hmm.
expectation, and you've now built a commitment to it. Like I think when Amit Verma, from what I've heard him say, when he started the Seen and the Unseen, it was shorter. I think it was an hour or so, and then he kind of
Yes.
extended and would let the
Hmm.
conversations go. And he keeps saying that in his podcast that his audience stays. They hear the
Hmm.
3 hour long podcast, and I think that's given him the confidence to say, let's keep it long because people are here for the conversation and they will listen. And I think he promises you just a very high quality, right? He's got the brightest minds coming in, and most interesting perspectives to be shared. It's not easily accessible anywhere else. I think there's very
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
competition. Where do you go and hear Pratap Bhanu Mehta talk about his personal and his political and his professional all in one over so long? I think people like you and me who will like listen to anything Pratap says, we will listen for
Yeah.
4 hours, 7 hours, whatever. Um, so I think if you know what you're in for, it's great quality content. There's not easy competition for it out there. High entry barriers to somebody else doing that. I think that long form builds a fan base.
Hmm. Okay, I think we need to take a break here. And after we come back, I am going to talk to you about monetization of content, advertising, and late stage capitalism, because that is what we do on this podcast. We praise late stage capitalism and we worship it to no extent. See you after this break.
Hello, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On Cock and Bull, Amit Doshi joins Cyrus and Shreyas after a long break. They talk about scary sheep of China and the 24-carat gold-coated steak. On Pulyabazi, Saurabh and Khyati discuss the recent report by Reserve Bank of India on municipal finance and the factors affecting it. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth shares the best ways to set goals and whether they should be time-bound or not. On Pop Rap, Snehil, Karan and Antariksh discuss the ongoing FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Catch new episodes on the IVM Pop channel. And on The Longest Constitution, Priya Mirza looks at the expansion of the freedom of movement of the citizens. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcasts.com. We have some exciting stuff for you. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, spread the word. Tell your friends and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You'll also find all our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Bumble, Kotak Privilege Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.
Hello and welcome back to Explain Like I'm 10, where we ask some simple questions which have some big complicated answers. Today we have with us Anushka Shah, the founder of Civic Studios, and she is here to answer one small question which we have. It's a very meta question called "What is content?" Before we continue the conversation, I wanted to tell you about this new show that we have launched on this very audio feed. It is called Page 10. It is hosted by Abbas Momin. If you are someone who does not follow the news, does not give a shit about what is happening in the world, you should listen to this podcast because in an hour we tell you the 4 most important stories in the week, and you will rather enjoy it listening to it, and you will get some amount of information which will make you look knowledgeable and just a hit at any party that you go to, obviously. So I wanted to make this conversation a little meta as well. We were talking about podcasting before we went to break. Now, when we were designing this podcast, which is ELI 10, we had a few big questions to answer. One is, of course, as Anushka pointed out, who will listen to like an hour, 15 minutes, an hour and a half worth of conversation, and why would they do it, right? So that hook was important. What is the hook there? The second thing is to make it more engaging. What do we do? So if it was just me and Anushka talking about these things, I feel like it would be less interesting, because now that Farah is here, which brings in a surprise element, and she can just interrupt whenever she wants. She can ask follow-up questions which I might not know or I might not have. That would automatically make it more engaging. And also the other factor was, as I think we spoke about earlier, either content is now extremely short, which is like 60 seconds, 90 seconds, which you're putting a lot of effort into, or it's extremely long, which is this or a web series, or like, movies are getting longer, etc. Anushka, is there any middle ground here? Like, are you still hopeful of like the 15-20 minute segment?
Honestly, it's an existential question we are grappling with.
Yes.
Because we have this, you mentioned earlier that we have this YouTube channel, Pocket Change, and there's a constant fight that goes on between the writers, I want to say and other people, but not really, it is me, which is that I'll be like, guys, 5-7 minutes video max, no one's watching more than that. And everyone's like, no, but the story needs it, and it's a good script, um and I think both sides have merit to it, but honestly, I'm not sure. I don't know what the space for that 15-20 minute content is. I think there are very specific formats where that's working. A lot of nonfiction on the internet works, irrespective of, I think, the length. I think a good explainer video, I think a good interview, I think a lot of like the film reviews, etc., are within that kind of zone. But my sense is that it's either that it's like 5-7 minutes, or then it's like 30-40 minutes. There's a lot of long form videos, from like absolute shit posting, like bored crap that's on the internet, to like good quality long interviews, podcasts, like the video versions, or then your 5 to 7 minute like SNL kind of sketches. I don't know about this 10-15 minutes. I think it's kind of a little bit no man's land.
Yeah, it's where I was, no man's land, which is 10 to 15 minutes of videos. Um, this is a struggle I went on with my producers also, Anushka, I must say, where they were like, "Are 10 minutes se kam rakho," and like I have to literally explain an entire law to people from the basics to the end, and you are just giving me 10 minutes. How is that even possible? But then, like, over a period of time, like Constitution was like 22 minutes to 23 minutes long, like shorter, like, so we managed to hit like an 11-12 minute mark after a point. But it was so hard to do that because you had to cut down so many things and so much information, so 90% of my research would just go to waste, and 10% of it is what I was using. Um, and it was a struggle. It is a real struggle, which I think you also pointed out. Farah, coming to monetization of content, um, what are your thoughts on sort of selling out in general, like influencers selling out?
So monetization. One second, give me a moment. Actually,
Yeah,
I'm in other thoughts because we were talking about this 15-20 minute content. So
go on.
basically, yeah. So I feel the question there is, who are you creating this content for? Because recently I was reading an article which showed four types of content. One is nibble content, that you are just watching when I'm talking to and I have a phone in my hand and I'm just just scrolling through reels or content and stuff, or I'm just drinking water right now, having my tea and doing something on my phone. So that's just a small nibble content. You do it for like 10-15 seconds. And then there's a snack content when you are actually sitting with whatever snacks you're having for like 5-7 minutes. So when you said 5-7 minute content, that comes under your snack content. So it's basically that. And 15-20 minute content comes under your meal content. So when you're having lunch,
Ah.
when you're having lunch, you suppose sit and watch an episode of some of the short form of content, or any show or series. So like lately people are like, lunch karte karte khana khate khate tarak mehta nahi dekha to what life is
Exactly.
it? Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically you can call Tarak Mehta or any other show that falls into 15-20 minute an episode content, that's a meal content. And then there comes a full meal content, like a full course meal content, which is like your long form content movies that you sit with your family, you are in a group and you are sitting and watching that content. So yeah, when you ask that question, this thing was just going in the back of my mind.
That's interesting. So you're saying that the meal content is like no man's territory right now, no man's land right
Yeah,
now.
right.
Interesting. So wait, nibble content is what you described as reels, right?
Yeah, reels. Basically your vertical short form videos that you're scrolling through. So
Right. So like, just to take this forward from your sort of example, now, so
hmm.
when you're so Farah, when you're actually doing this nibble content thing, right, which is like, yeah, I found this insane when I first used TikTok. Uh, it was mesmerizing. It was hypnotizing, right?
Yes, it
I was
was.
on my phone one day and I was like going like this. So from nibble, it became full course meal so
Yeah,
quickly because
yeah,
I spent like
yeah.
3 hours and I didn't even know. I
Same. I looked up in like 4 hours at on the clock.
Yeah. There's no
see.
stopping. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
but it's a bit scary to me,
yeah,
to be honest,
yeah,
because Anushka, like, as I was saying, I mean, I think you also had the same experience, right? Where it's hypnotizing. Like, you don't know where time is going anymore. So
yeah.
from nibble, it
Right.
just became like this giant
Full
amount of
course
time,
thing.
full
Yeah.
course meal. I
Yeah.
don't get this. I don't get this, honestly. But obviously the apps are designed in a way to keep you on the platform, and beach beach mein pachwa TikTok ya pachwa reel will always be an ad, so that you're
Yeah.
consuming that as well. So I wanted to come to monetization there, where
Yeah.
uh, what are your thoughts, Anushka, on the attention economy in general, and also how do you push civic content in an attention economy?
Welcome to every existential conversation we have in the office. Um, so I guess there's two, three questions within that, right? One is on the attention economy. I think some of that was what we had discussed about the 8-second attention span for short content to coming in with more of an intention to watch for longer, for long form content. I think to your point on TikTok and when it started, and all of us non-Gen Zs probably discovering TikTok, and you're like, whoa, where did I lose half the day? Um, I, I think TikTok, particularly as an algorithm, and of course now we don't have it in India, but in general, TikTok as an algorithm is very much designed for discovery and exploration. It's not
Hmm.
as community driven as, let's say, Instagram or Facebook, right? Which is about who you follow and your networks and your interests specifically. So I think the reason that TikTok, I think you can spend so many hours is on it's like going for a random walk through a forest, tripping on something because you just don't know what you're going to find, and everything's kind of mesmerizing. Um, Keeping it a family show here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah. Um, so I think the discovery part is what really helps keep that attention as well, because
Hmm.
uh, every commitment within that 4 hours is just 30 seconds or 60 seconds, right? It's very short. So you don't mind sitting through that. You don't mind if you don't like it and just skipping to the next one because there's an endless amount of content in that universe.
Yeah.
And I think it's also bringing you in on TikTok, it's bringing you things from people in places you may not actually experience on your other platforms. When TikTok was there
Hmm.
in India, I don't know if you had caught this, but Amit Verma had just announced on his podcast that he was doing like a series of classes or a course, an anthropological course using TikTok in India. And that's
Oh,
because you were coming across creators from the smallest towns and villages, right?
yes,
You were,
yes.
which was like incredible. You were
Right.
seeing young people in India in the way that the Pepsi generation did not ever represent them.
I
Um,
I had I had one of my favorite TikTok creators was this guy from Muzaffarnagar who was playing carom, right? And he was doing trick shots. I have spent hours watching his content just and the funniest thing was so I went for his whole anthology, right? Which is like from the beginning to now. In the
yeah,
beginning, he had like a shitty camera doing whatever. I could see his production value just going up
going
slowly,
up.
slowly, and then ads appear. Like behind
Right.
him, he's promoting like a local tailor, he's promoting like a local sari shop, and people are actually paying him money to do trick shots, but with their ads in the beard. But yeah, go
Amazing.
on, Anushka. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
no, that's an exact example. It's also an example of what we were saying. How do you define content? It could be literally somebody doing like carom trick shots.
Yeah.
So I think that that's kind of from an attention point of view. I think that's why TikTok specifically manages to keep that keep your attention for long spans. I think your second question on monetization. I think every
Mhm.
platform has its own own approaches to that, but mainly it's advertising. Mainly it's driven by in content branding. It's driven by any platform revenues from the ads. So yeah, I don't know if there's something more specific within that monetization you want to go into.
I do because like the civic content bit, right,
Hmm.
which is like when you're trying to push for something like a civic change or
Yeah,
like
yeah,
giving a message. I don't know how it just like goes into this mess with like you also have to earn money, but you also have to talk about civic change, which also might have elements of politics in it because obviously
yeah,
social change does come
Yeah.
from
yeah,
political movement. So how do
yeah,
you
for sure.
deal with that? It's tricky.
It is. Yeah, yeah. I think there's no getting around the fact that it's super tricky. I think that the political one is a little bit easier to answer because I think there, so you can have certain content creation policies within your team, right? Where you are not taking the name of any politician, any political party, any
Hmm.
real institution, any department. You can kind of just have a blanket staying clear of that. Not the kind of world we want to live in, but we do what we have to.
Hmm.
I think that the monetization when you're talking about social civic issues gets a little trickier because it means that it's not just that you don't mention things that could get you in trouble. It is that you stay away from topics that go around that. So I do think inevitably talking about civic change reduces. We have reduced how much we talk about civic change, and we now talk more about social change. And the distinction that we
Hmm.
draw between the two is that if politics has to do with your elected representatives and your political parties, and social has to do with issues that you face in society. Civic has to do with the conversations between society and government, and kind of what are the power structures within that? How do those negotiations happen? What tools do you have available as a citizen to voice your social concerns to the government? So I think that layer does become hard for us. We're able to do it more in long form content. We are writing this amazing web series on the women's gender right movement in India from the 70s till date. It's a complete fictional, historic fiction take on a very real story, but it's focused on a social movement, and it's focused on
Hmm.
what does it take for people to come together and do those negotiations. Now that because historic, we can do that a little bit more without getting into current politics. We are doing similarly for the Chipko movement, for India's polio campaign. So if we're focusing a lot on historic social movements and what we can learn out of that. Even something like Vakil Babu, which we did, that's set in current times, but it's about getting your public institutions, which is your courts, to function better. It's about gender sensitized lawyering. So again, you can stay clear of political action within that, and you can
Hmm.
focus more on institutional reform, but it's only then a part of the story. We all know
Right.
that when that reform actually needs to be done, it has to come with political engagement. um, when it comes to short form content, I think it's a lot trickier,
Hmm.
because it's hard to touch upon civic or political issues and get them to be trending and to be attention grabbing enough, but it not being making fun of people in power. A lot about
Hmm.
like entertainment and comedy and drama is about you having good guys and bad guys, and you can have nuanced and gray characters within that, but if you're not able to call out where the problem is coming from, then that's a bit of an issue.
It's a bit of an issue. I understand
Yeah.
that because I mean, I came from subscription to advertisement, and it's a big shift for me as well. And making that little distinction between, oh, not only are we now working to sort of have like content that is widely consumed in whatever way we can, because it's ultimately going to be like a vehicle to deliver some ad which is actually funding the show, and that is the reality of
Yeah.
what we are living in. So Farah, like, just to take the question forward a little bit about influencers, right? So you do deal with a lot of influencers that come to office, etc.,
Yeah.
whatever. um
Hmm.
how do you see this whole thing about humans as influencers becoming vehicles for, well, capitalism?
Um, I believe, see, social media is basically a massy platform.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so when these high profile guests who are very popular, and when they come in, so that helps us capitalize on them. So, uh, yeah, basically
I think Farah is being a little shy. She'll get into trouble with her influencer friends. She's like,
You
नहीं
asked a
थोड़ा
very
सा
contentious question.
I did.
yeah.
Yeah. No, but like I have a very clear view. I'm okay with becoming a vehicle for capitalism right
Hmm.
now at this point of time, because I'm
Hmm.
I'm also willing to see how to strike that balance, which I think has been a struggle with me as well, right, Anushka? Like, since the beginning, like, so because I came from a subscription model. So initially it was like, oh, I'm making challenging content, I'm making content where I'm calling
Yeah.
out like powerful leaders, etc., because I had this belief that subscriptions will come and that is how we will be supported. Yeah. But with this shift, I'm also now trying to see what is that line that I have to draw where I can strike a balance, where I can, well, do both, which is like bring about civic change or social change, as you say, and also at the same time sustain what I'm
Hmm.
doing
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it. There is no real answer to it. But one is, of course, completely selling out and not doing any sort of political content or social content or whatever, or not just touching that with a 10-foot pole. Um, Funny thing, I was making reels, and now Instagram has added categories. Like Farah, you might know, like they add topics is one option that comes.
Yeah.
I did a well political reel, right? Like something calling out like BJP IT cell or whatever. Um, and when I looked up the topics, there was no news. There is no politics. There is, even in the categories, there is no section which is even close to what I was doing,
True. Yeah.
Hmm.
and which actually shows you that even Instagram doesn't want to promote like provocative content anymore.
Yeah.
Um, just one final sort of thing that I wanted to delve into was algorithms. Um, how much of a slave are we to algorithms, really, Anushka?
I think hugely. Um, when I used to work at MIT, we would do a lot of research and thinking about what the algorithms are and how can you apply a civic lens to bring the power of algorithms back to the consumers. We had my boss at the time, Ethan Zuckerman, who works a lot on thinking about social media and a public form of social media as well, had designed this provocative tool in which you could go and tweak the algorithms. Metrics the way you want it. Do you want to see more content that's comedy? Do you want to see content by all men or all women or different genders? Do you want to, so it was a fun, just a provocative tool. um but I think massively because like you said about Instagram, I think it's actually impossible to run ads on anything that is news or political.
Hmm.
Every time our ad gets flagged on YouTube or through the Facebook ad platform, it's almost always because they found some mention of news or political, and we are so self-censored that we don't, but it's accidental mislabeling of our content where it'll say this is news or political, and we're like, bye, it's really not. But there's not enough like staff or capacity right now in any of the tech companies for them to have a human intervention, right? It's
Hmm.
just like the behind the scenes kind of computers deciding whether or not, on machine learning deciding how to label something as a certain category. So it becomes really problematic to getting that keep flagged. I think that every platform has its different algorithm. I think we were saying earlier, like TikTok focuses on discovery and exploration, Facebook, Instagram on interest groups and relationships. Um, but ultimately, it's a
Does it
black
still do
box.
that though? Does it does it still focus on relationships and community maybe, or
I think to
how
the
do you look at that?
extent that on Facebook and Instagram you are following certain people, you do have a
Hmm.
network that you've created. So to that extent, it is linked to that. How much it does that, honestly, I think only the powers that be within these
Yeah.
platforms can tell you because it's a complete black box.
Hmm.
So I think it's problematic because we've known that Facebook studies have leaked out where they've tried to tweak algorithms in a certain way to test for what makes you happy, what makes you sad. So I
Right.
think you might think you're on this like democratic platform where everybody's sharing and it's free will, but it's very much not. And I think there's a lot of
Hmm.
apart from the black boxness of algorithms, it's also now the just big rise of bots, right? And in any
Hmm.
platform that started out as democratic in the 90s, the internet was seen as the savior and the biggest form of pushing democracy. But ultimately, I think whoever yields the most power can also manipulate those platforms uh, in the same way as it's always been through time. So,
There was this experiment. I don't know if you were mentioning the same one where someone created like YouTube profiles, different YouTube profiles, and then they started clicking on one video, and they started to see where it will take them and how fast
mm.
it takes them to conspiracy theories. And it was crazy because, like, say, like you start with Andrew Tate. And then you obviously you go down that whole rabbit hole of misogyny,
Yeah,
toxic
yeah,
masculinity, and then suddenly you end up with QAnon.
yeah,
It's like what just happened, like, like you
yeah,
went from point A
yeah.
to, yeah. So they try to identify which are the points which are like entry points towards
To
conspiracy
conspiracies.
theories. Yeah.
No, I've not
And
seen this experiment, but makes sense.
yeah, so I think Facebook had also done one of these studies. I forget. I don't know if it was an official study or not, but I remember reading it somewhere. So I think we will end this here. But Farah, before we go, if you have any questions for Anushka, please go right ahead.
No, I think we have covered pretty much everything.
I have a question
uh,
for Farah if I'm allowed to ask
yeah,
first.
yeah.
Yeah.
Go on. Yeah, I was just about to ask. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Anushka. Before we go on, this is a trick I learned from you, by the way, which is so yeah, like so. Farah, just to let you know, so like she had called me for this event, right, where I think she
Okay.
was launching Civic Studios, and I was
Mm-hmm.
there, and other people were there. She was hosting this panel, and at the end of it, she was like, "Okay, so do any of these panelists have questions for each other? Please ask." I was like, "That's very fascinating.
Yeah,
Go
very
on."
fascinating and
Yes, go on,
interactive.
Anushka.
Because I think it's when on any panel, it's interesting people, and then I'm sure they're listening to each other through the panels. I'm like, you guys must have questions for yourself.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I've always tried to, I'm interested in understanding where the audio and the podcast journey is going. And I'm curious about, Meghnad's earlier question on the monetization and how that's changing within the podcast space, if at all, because it's one place where you're listening with quite focused attention. I feel like I pick up on ads that are in podcast way more than I do on video.
Hmm.
Um,
That's right. So, actually, audio medium has become like a more engaging and a more I would say rather a tighter content that people like indulging into. So when we say, so we have also, like, the brands have also started realizing this medium. So that's the reason we have started doing more of branded content as well, because podcasting as a medium has become a very engaging platform per se.
Hmm. We
got
have
it.
done
And
some research. I don't have the figures off the top of my head, but I can send it to you, Anushka. We have this commissioned this research on podcasting as well, which shows that I think the engagement rate when it comes to advertising, or like the like how people are acting on that advertisement, is I think 8 times more in podcasting than on YouTube.
Oh my God.
So
Amazing.
yeah, it's actually quite nuts, and also
Yeah.
the retention rate is super high
Yeah.
compared to like videos or anything of that sort, because if you think about it this way, right, podcasting is a very you can do it as a passive activity as well. So
Hmm.
while you're doing your chores, like while you're
Correct.
cooking, exercising, gymming, whatever, like
Correct.
for example, like the Pratap Bhanu Mehta
Yeah.
episode that we
yeah,
heard,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
did it while I was cycling. Yeah,
Right.
like I was constantly listening to him while I was going on like my
Yeah.
cycles every morning. So it's a very passive activity. So then you don't even skip ads.
Correct.
So
I
because you
exactly. Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
doing something else. so
Yes.
so
Yeah.
how I listen to podcasts is I turn it on and I have
Hmm.
Bluetooth. So
Hmm.
it's the phone is somewhere and I'm just roaming around doing things.
Same.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so in a way, it's
Hmm.
a better ad delivery mechanism than anything else right now,
Yeah.
because you're completely letting yourself loose, and you're
Correct.
like,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just letting this go, and then it'll just
Yeah.
go on for hours, right? So
No, I feel like I listen, and also a lot of podcast hosts I think do the ads almost sincerely. It's like
yeah.
products that they're
Yeah.
advertising that connect with the things they're talking about, their work or their issue. And now if I've committed to listening to a podcast host or a podcast, I'm a fan of theirs, and or I'm part of their
Hmm.
community. So I'm listening much more actively to things that they're advertising as well.
Yeah.
I've actually tried products coming out of podcast ads,
Yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah,
don't think I've
yeah.
ever
Yeah.
done that for anything else. So
No, same, because host reads are so relatable. Like
yeah.
all the and there are interesting things happening in the podcast space when it comes to advertising also. Like for example, I would give you Lex Friedman, right? So Lex Friedman has, like,
Mm,
again, like I was listening to his podcast with Destiny, this big
Hmm.
streamer, right? 4.5 hours long. He does all of his ad reads in the first 10 minutes of his podcast.
Hmm.
uh, and he's like, listen, I know, you listen to the conversation, and every time he says this is like, you can skip this ad, you can skip all the products, but I want to tell you that this is something that I believe in. These are products that I believe in. So I feel like if you want to support this podcast, please do go through these first 10 minutes if you like me,
Yeah.
and if you want to listen to, if you like what I do. It's so sincere. You're exactly what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like, uh
Yeah.
it's like this guy who you trust, you have heard for
Yeah.
hours on end,
Yeah.
is
Correct.
now telling
Yeah.
you about this product that he likes, and it's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would
I,
imagine like brands or advertisers should be paying a ton to be
they
featured on
should.
those.
They
Yeah, they
should.
should.
हेलो ब्रांड्स, इसको स्पॉन्सर करो थोड़ा सा। इधर इधर जगह है बीच में, मैंने जो ब्रेक लिया था ना, उधर तुम्हारा ऐड भी आ सकता है। आई डू होस्ट रीड, promise, I'll do host read. No, and the way to also like approach brands for us now is basically to actually give them sample host reads. Like
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
selling something or whatever else you can do. And that, I mean, still it's a niche sort of market right now, but obviously
Yeah.
we are seeing some success, otherwise we wouldn't exist and we wouldn't grow and we
Yeah.
Hmm.
wouldn't expand, and
Yeah,
we
for
are,
sure.
so which is great.
Amazing.
So that is about it. Thank you so much guys for doing this with me. Thank you Farah, and thank
Thank
you
you,
Anushka.
Meghnad.
And
Thanks so much for having us.
I hope you had an enjoyable time on this podcast.
Yeah,
Yes.
for
Yeah.
sure. It's really nice to hear.
Yes.
And Farah, very nice to meet you and hear your thoughts.
Same here, Anushka. Nice to meet you too.
Where can people follow you, Anushka? Do you want to have anything to plug?
I will plug Civic Studios. So if you can follow our work on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, we are on Instagram at civic_studios. So I'd say, yeah, that's the best place to follow us. And you can follow me if
Uh,
you want. I'm a very boring Anushka Shah 1991 on Instagram. So
And you
and
can
yeah.
follow IVM Podcast across social media channels at the rate
yes,
IVM Podcasts.
yes. Farah, do you want to plug anything personal?
You can follow me on Instagram. That my handle is Farah_Romane and on LinkedIn it's Farah Romane.
Wonderful. You can follow me on at me Meghnad at mastodon.social. Ah, and also you can follow me on Twitter on at me Meghnad. I think the countdown for blue ticks is now lesser, so I don't know how long I'll have it. I announce it at the end
Yeah.
of every podcast now, so I want to see till how long I have it without paying. So please follow me on Instagram as well, which is Meghnad. So thank you so much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do subscribe to this channel. If you're listening to this on audio, please do listen to Page 10 as well, which is hosted by Abbas Momin. Episodes out every Monday. ELI 10 episodes out every Friday. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Hi.
Bye.